Okay, so this is a video on action, activity, and task. It's a video that I said I would make if people wanted it and people said yes, following the be, do, have video. In that video, and you'll see a link around here somewhere to that video, I talked about the importance of vision, what it is that you want, the have, knowing what you want to create and having that clarity around that, and who you are being. Are you being the person in yourself that creates that easily and effortlessly, the kind of person that creates that kind of result? Be, do, have. Now, I didn't talk much about the do, okay, but that's an important part. If people look at kind of new thought stuff, what people call the law of attraction or whatever, one of the mistakes that people make is they think that if they just get everything right up here, they can just sort of sit there and glow and the world is going to reorganize itself to bring them all that they want. But it doesn't. You have to get out in the world and engage with the world. This is where the doing takes place. But not all doing is equal. There are different ways to engage with the world in that category, but not all doing is equal. Now, I mentioned that I have three categories of doing, which are action, activity, and task. I'm going to talk about those in this video. It's ultimately all about you being empowered to create the results that you want to create in your life and using the be, do, have model to do that. Now, I'm going to talk about these three categories. I'm also going to tie them in with the idea of higher mind and lower mind. And I've made videos on this before, that our higher mind is the part of us that is connected with our vision, is aspirational, is values driven, and our lower mind is much more about survival, comfort, status, hierarchy, basic everyday drives and needs. And if you want to be able to create in your life, the place to do it from is your higher mind. That's where you live in creation from your higher mind. You live in reaction from your lower mind, largely. So these three categories of doing, of engaging with the world, action, activity, and task, we can look at these in relation to higher mind and lower mind as well. So let's dive into this. So first of all, let's look at action first. Now for me, I'm going to do another video specifically on action at some point, because action to me is the sort of gold standard of creative engagement on that doing level in the world. Okay, when we live in action, through action coming from the higher mind, this is when we are most adept at dancing results out of reality, working with the complexity of life to bring about the responses that we want. Action in alignment with the right kind of being and the vision, the having. Okay, so action. What is action? Action is any engagement with the world, expression into doing that is in the moment and of the moment. Okay, it comes from this moment. You hear my dog pitter-pattering around. Action is in the moment and of the moment, and it comes from that spark. Okay, now higher mind, lower mind. We can have action that is spontaneous and in the moment and comes from higher mind stuff, i.e. is connected with our vision and us being ourselves at our best. It is in alignment with what we want to create in the world. Or we can have action that comes from lower mind drives. So if I go, donut, and grab the donut and eat it, that's action. It's in the moment and of the moment, okay? But it's in service of a lower mind drive. So it's more like a reaction than an action, in a sense. Higher mind action is if I'm in my vision, I'm in my inspiration, I know who I am being, I know that I am the person that creates this, I'm resonating fully with what it is that I'm creating, and I get this, boom, do this thing. Okay, it could be anything. It could be me picking up the telephone and making a call. Now, I read a number of years ago Richard Branson's autobiography, which is called Losing My Virginity. I've read it twice. One of the interesting things about Richard Branson, he is a guy who lives in action. He's coming from vision, okay, but he lives in action. If you read that book, you'll find him saying things like, I had this thought, so I picked up the phone and okay, so he's there, he's in this thought flow, which is generative around what he wants to create. But as soon as he gets the impulse to do so, he expresses that into the world, usually through connecting with other human beings. Okay, picking up the phone, making a call, having a conversation, something like this. This is a higher mind action. Lower mind action is easily manipulatable. I've talked elsewhere about things like smartphones and how they can pump your dopamine system for you to just keep scrolling or doing whatever they want you to do. This is living in reaction reaction, not in action or not in creation. So we want to be coming from our higher mind place. Now, you might say, why action? Particularly when I talk about activity and task, why action? Why is action particularly important? I'll do another video on this, but action enables us to be present and connected with the moment, and it has some very interesting effects. We create things that I sometimes call action cascades. And if you take the Steve Jobs phrase I've talked about elsewhere, way back in the past, you cannot connect the dots looking forward, only looking backwards. Well, if you cannot connect the dots looking forward, how do you know what to do? Okay, there's no right doing. There's just the action that's in alignment with what you want to create. All right, and action is more adaptive. It sets up these action cascades. It sets up weird ripple effects. And I'm going to make a case in a different video as to, as W.H. Murray put it, why there is magic, genius, and power in action. I'm going to do a different video on that, though. I'm not going to cover that here. But action here, for me, is the gold standard of engagement with the world at the doing level of be, do, have. Now, let's look at activity next. Now, activity is any sort of ongoing thing that you do that produces a certain sort of result. And it's something you might put in daily time for. So if you spend time reading every day or studying, that's an activity. It's not an action. It's not coming from that impulse in the moment. It's an activity that you have decided you're going to engage in for whatever reasons, because you believe that it produces a particular sort of result. Okay? So examples of activities might be things like reading and study. They might be something like meditation. They might be journaling, self-creation work, these sorts of things. These are all what I call generative activities. But again, higher mind, lower mind. There are activities that are not necessarily generative activities. So maybe television watching, just watching TV shows, this is not necessarily a generative activity. It might be. You know, if you're a TV producer, then watching TV probably makes sense. Right? It's going to feed in. If you are a crafter of stories and narratives, you might watch a lot of movies and stuff. That could be a generative activity. On the other hand, if you're doing it, that's doing it from a higher mind place, you see. Now, you can do the same thing from a higher mind place or a lower mind place. If I'm watching movies because I want to deepen my understanding of story form, that's a higher mind activity. If I'm watching movies just to unwind, just to zone out, just to mulch out, whatever, it's a lower mind activity. And again, if you go back to the higher mind, lower mind video, if you go back, you find that, you'll know that I'm not saying one is good and one is bad. They just produce different kinds of results in your life. And if you want to be a person that starts creating the outcomes habitually that you want to see in your life, you want to spend most of your time coming from your higher mind. You cannot banish your lower mind. You try and banish your lower mind, its requirements, its needs, its activities, these sorts of things are wholly, it will usually fight back. It will usually find its way through and corrupt your creative processes in some way. So this is an important thing to recognize. Okay, so that's activity. Now, I make sure for myself I have some generative activities that I put into my life. One of my generative activities that I do regularly is self-creation. So back to be, do, have. I talked about the importance of being, who you are being, how you are being. One of my regular activities is the activity of self-creation and recreation. Another one of my regular generative activities is the activity of envisioning, being at that have level of knowing what it is that I want to create in the world and resonating with that. I do that regularly. So this is a generative activity. It's not an action, because I don't just impulsively do it. I know it's a good thing to do, so I regularly participate in that practice. Another way of thinking about an activity is a practice. Somebody has a meditation practice. Somebody has a self-creation practice. And maybe practice is a more higher mind concept, because you wouldn't say, well, I have a movie watching practice. You just say it was an activity. Now, the last category here is task. Task. Now, task is something that gets lionized in our culture. Okay, we are taught from a young age, okay, know what it is that you want to do, know the steps that you need to get there, and get down and do the work. Make a task list, put a Gantt chart together, something like this. So going back to that Steve Jobs phrase, you cannot connect the dots looking forward, only looking backwards. What a task list is an attempt to connect the dots looking forward. Right? If I do these things, then this result will come about, and sometimes it does. So I'm going to come back to this in a moment. However, oftentimes it doesn't. So there's that old Mike Tyson line, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Or no plan survives first contact with the enemy, whatever it might be. When you decide ahead of time, here's the things I've got to do, that can quickly get out of alignment with what's unfolding in reality. Now, if you want to, make a roast dinner or something like that, having a task-based approach can be pretty good. If you've got expertise, you could probably do it from an action place, but you go, well, I need to do this, 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 and this, and this. However, you don't want to hold too tightly to that task list. There is a Special Forces maxim, which I think is excellent, which is nothing ever works without a plan, but no plan ever works. So what that is saying is, if your list of tasks goes out of alignment with reality, then you need to adjust it quickly, which usually means when you're dealing with complexity, letting go of the tasks and moving back into a live, active engagement that is based on action. Okay, so I'm very wary about getting too caught up in tasks. Here's another problem with tasks, even though, as I say it again, the task-based approach to doing life is lionized in our society. It is inculcated into us through our schooling in Western culture. Okay, it's a very left hemisphere way of doing things. And it is not without its merits. I want to make that absolutely clear. And some people are excellent at doing it. Some people are really good at going, here's what I've got to do, getting their head down, grinding through, getting that stuff done. And what that results in, by the way, oftentimes is productivity, but rarely creativity. Okay, and not generativity, which is a different term I may look at elsewhere. I don't want to go off down too many side angles on this. All right, so task can be great. Task list, task organization can be great, particularly if you're of that character and you want to be productive in what you do. Okay, that can be great, and you're not dealing a lot with complexity, a lot of complex variables. One of the problems with tasks and having a task focus is something that Simon Sinek has called the split can take place. Okay, he uses this in a slightly different context, but here I'm going to talk about it in terms of task. The split is when, from a place of vision, you go, right, this is an awesome thing that I want to create, and you're vibrating with that vision, right? You're fully connected. Every fiber of your being is alive with the vision, and you go, right. But instead of taking action, you go, so what do I need to do to get this to happen? And you sit down, you start planning, and you get your task list. Maybe you do it super spectacular, you do a Gantt chart, whatever it will be, and you go, right, I've got it. And then you start to execute your tasks. But at some point, you get out of resonance with your vision and what you're creating, and it just becomes a pile of things to do. And there's no inspiration. There's no aliveness in it anymore. It becomes a series of dead tasks to do, and you go, well, I got to do these things. If I don't do these things, then I'm never going to get the result that I want. And it moves us to what you might call a low vibration state. And this is the thing, how you engage with the world is hugely significant. I talked about this in the other video, in the Be Do Have video. I believe I talked about it if I remember correctly. COVID has spiked my brain since I had COVID. My memory's been shot, but I think I talked about it there. How you engage counts, particularly when you're engaging with other living organisms, right? So to-do lists, tasks, these sorts of things, they can lose their life, and they lose their flexibility, and they lose their adaptiveness, and they're no longer on mark. They're no longer having you resonate with what it is that you're creating, so you don't do it so well. So there's a problem with task lists and this sort of thing. Oh, by the way, what's the difference between an action and a task? So an action is something where I go, like the other day, I had an impulse to connect with somebody I haven't spoken to for a long time. So I wanted to connect with them because of what was in my mind and what was in my heart and what was in my aliveness in that moment. So I called them. Okay, I messaged them first and said, you've got 5 minutes for a call. But I did it right now. So that's an action. But if I'd gone, yes, I need to schedule in when I'm going to speak to that person because that's an important thing and I need to get that information. Once I kick it into the future, an action is not an action anymore. It becomes a task. So if I'd have done it in the moment, it would have had the aliveness, it would have had the original reason for doing it still fully and intimately connected to that action. Okay, the original impetus would be touching the action as the action took place. That creates a different kind of aliveness. Once I kicked it into the future, it's likely that it's going to die, right? Unless I take some time before I do the task to remember and reconnect with the impetus behind it in order to get the energy back inside of it. Okay, so when we kick actions into the future via a to-do list or a Gantt chart, they become tasks. The life can drop out of them because the original impulse, the impetus, the vision, the vibration, the energy, whatever you want to call it, is no longer in touch with the thing that you're doing. And so, as the old song goes, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. You do it differently in a way that doesn't have the generative quality that a live action has. Okay? Now, you can't do everything right now. Sometimes it's like, well, these would be useful things to do, so I do want to make a list of them. Now, I just want to say something pragmatic about how I approach this. I don't do to-do lists. I will have possibilities lists, but I want them to remain in the realm of possibility because I do not want to put myself under obligation from those things, because obligation is the mother of procrastination. If I've just got to do all these things, because if I don't do them, then the result I want won't come about, I'm placing obligation on myself, right? And my lower mind is going, because I'm not in the vibration of my higher mind, in the vision that created it. I've just got the, yeah, I really should do that. And my lower mind's going to be like, but I don't want to. So it's going to make actions happen that keep me from the tasks, right? Lower mind actions, reactions. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm careful with this stuff. So the way that I do this for myself, I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it, the way I do this for myself is I go, right, this is a possibilities list. There's no rule in the universe that says I have to do any of these things. So I look over the list, and instead of going, I've got to do these things, I go, which of these things is going to move me forward most? And I'm connected back into my vision. Okay, so perusing the possibilities list becomes a generative activity instead of like this heavy thing, which is like, oh, I've got to go to the next thing on my to-do list. Okay, so I will use lists, but not to-do lists, only possibilities lists. Okay, so if you're new to this channel, you're probably thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Everything on this channel is about personal mastery. Okay, that means you being able to effectively create the kind of results that you want to create in your life. Things you go, yeah, this is it. I'm making things happen the way that I would love them to happen. All right, so this is an inside-out job. We start in our mind, in our operating system, and we work out into the world from that place. Everything on this channel is about that. I'm not suggesting that every single video that you watch should make immediate sense as soon as you watch it. These are often pieces in a puzzle. One of the best ways that you can make use of this channel is by asking the questions you want to ask in the comments section as to how these pieces fit together. Or if there's something I've said in a video, like in this video, where you go, well, what did you mean by that, James? You know, it's a new idea or a new concept, just ask. I can either point you to a video I've already made or make a video to address that point. But remember this idea of personal mastery, you being able to show up in the world and make the differences that you want to make consistently. And that's differences that lead to fulfillment, reward, good things for yourself and the people who are important to you, maybe the world at large, whatever it may be. It's an inside job, but it's an inside out job. It needs to kind of express out into the world. Okay, so if you have got some value from this video, please do make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you've got questions, please do make use of that comment section below to ask. And if you're new to the channel, and you're looking to up your game in creating whatever it is that you want to create in your life, please do subscribe to the channel. Please do hit the notifications bell, and please do look at this channel as a resource for you. You can ask questions and I will bring my take on it. Maybe I've got some goodness for you. Maybe I've got something that can help you out. Okay, until we next connect, keep on making great things happen in your world. Keep on moving your mind to shape your life.